In 2017, a regular personal ad appeared in a small periodical. A kind, caring man with a good sense of humor wishes to meet an attractive woman for a serious relationship. And he loves children and animals, doesn't like lies or betrayal. It would seem like nothing special. Thousands of people are looking for and finding suitable partners in the same way, and even starting families. But in this case, the sweet ad was placed in the prison magazine Kazeni Dom and belonged to a repeat offender who had already been convicted twice and was serving his latest sentence for sexual abuse. Maybe this man really was planning to leave his criminal past behind and start a new life? Let's find out. On October 9, 2019, Liza Kiseleva left her home and never returned. She was 9 years old. The girl was walking to school number 73 along her usual route and disappeared. A large-scale search began. On the second day, the police began questioning the owners of the garages that Liza passed on her way to school. Among them was a certain Mikhail Tuvatin. This man behaved strangely with the police and kept insisting that he didn't understand what was going on, even though the whole city had been talking about it for 3 days straight. Only visitors to the city didn't know about the girl's disappearance and the search for her. Given all the circumstances, Tuvatin was put under serious pressure. After all, he already had an unsavory past. He had multiple convictions, including for sexual abuse and lewd acts against those under 18. Mikhail Tuvatin was barely 20 when he first got caught for various minor offenses. Back then, he got off with a fine. A few years later, in 2004, he broke into someone else's apartment and stole 36,000 rubles, for which he served his first prison sentence. But he didn't serve long, just half a year, and was released in October 2005. A neighbor of the Tuvatin family later said that after his second prison term, Tuvatin tried to get settled on the outside. His mother was running around for him, fussing. He came back. He tried to get different jobs. But he was not quiet for long, secretive, and didn't really talk to anyone in the yard. After a short time, in that same 2005, Tuvatin broke the law again, this time committing something worse than theft. Lewd acts against a girl who was 12 years old. Mikhail showed her his penis. However, even this time the sentence was short, and after just a year, Mikhail was free again, feeling that he could get away with anything. The next time he was caught stealing. After a brief investigation, the court delivered its verdict, and in 2009, Mikhail Tuvatin was sent back to prison. This third conviction was for theft involving unlawful entry into a residence. Obviously, being behind bars had no effect on Tuvatin's way of life. Basically, there's nothing surprising about that. Our prisons are only called correctional facilities. In reality, they don't correct anyone. They just make people more bitter. And so, after serving just 2 years, Mikhail was released in time for the holidays, December 31, 2010. To celebrate his release and ring in the new year, the seasoned ex-con decided to do it in a rather typical way, still unacceptable. After making it home in the city of Engels, which is 20 kilometers from Saratov, Tuvatin started drinking right away. And after that, already under the influence of alcohol, he showed his true colors. Drunk and aggressive, he went looking for trouble. At that moment, by unfortunate chance, a random passerby was walking by. The young woman, born in 1985, was calmly heading home before the holiday evening, looking forward to seeing her family and friends. Seeing the suspicious man, she tried to avoid direct contact with him, but Tuvatin caught up with her and suddenly yanked the purse hanging from her shoulder. Failing to snatch the bag in one pull, he covered the young woman's mouth with his hand, simultaneously squeezing her throat with the other and threatening to kill her if she moved. After that, he demanded that she give him everything valuable. Having taken the cell phone and a camera in a fabric case, which he mistook for a wallet, Tuvatin decided not to stop there. He dragged the victim into the nearest dark alley, tore off her tights and brutally sexually assaulted her, throwing the girl right onto the snow, ignoring the pleas of the unfortunate girl who was ready to give up any valuables to save her own dignity. It should be emphasized that the victim was a fragile woman. She was about 150 centimeters tall and weighed just over 40 kilograms, making her the perfect target for Tuvatin. Tuvatin hunted exclusively children and petite girls. After the sexual assault, while continuing to celebrate New Year's as if nothing had happened, the criminal openly used the stolen phone, replacing the old SIM card with a new one that his mother had bought. It was thanks to this circumstance that the police easily found the device and also arrested Tuvatin himself less than a week after the attack. During the investigation, the accused quickly gave a confession and fully admitted his guilt. On April 20, 2011, the Engels District Court sentenced Tuvatin to 6.5 years. And here is a quote from a former employee of Correctional Colony No. 17 where Tuvatin served his second to last sentence. He jumped out of the prison van at the gates of the colony. You could immediately tell he was intimidated, and his personal file clearly noted his low social status. So he came to us already as one of the prison untouchables, or, as they say in movies, a petushara. He was brought up from quarantine to the 10th barrack, that's the inmate work detail unit. He immediately was put on cleaning duty there and practically lived in the bathroom, which was his main workplace for his entire sentence. A few people beat him up, but not badly, mostly at the beginning to break him in. Otherwise, he did his duties, cleaned the bathroom, and no one paid any attention to him. You can immediately sense the highly intellectual style of a correctional facility employee. Tuvatin was not under psychiatric supervision, and throughout his sentence he kept in touch only with his mother. During this time he finished evening school and at the colony's vocational school learned to be a molder, a milling machine operator, and an electrician. He behaved well. Therefore the colony administration rewarded him as many as 5 times. By the summer of 2017, Tuvatin was already free again. The former convict's tendencies were clearly reflected in his social media accounts, where he displayed an obsessive fascination with perverse forms of sexual activity and also showed an interest in cars and fast driving. It's likely that these two passions were intertwined in Tuvatin's disturbed mind, since he spent a lot of time in his garage. According to Elena Perepelova, the head of the Police Precinct Officers and Juvenile Affairs Department, in July 2017, based on a report from the precinct officer, Tuvatin was placed under preventive monitoring. While he was under supervision, he was checked at his place of residence every week, and there were no complaints about Mikhail at that time. Valeria Maximenko, the deputy head of the Federal Penitentiary Service, told the press that Tuvatin had been repeatedly convicted, including for sexual offenses. Psychologists concluded that he needed supervision, which is why the prosecutor requested increased control over him, but the judge refused. Such negligence on the part of judicial officials was one of the reasons for the tragedy. Liza Kiseleva was the eldest child in the family, and that's why her mother, considering her daughter already quite independent, trusted her and let her go out on her own starting from the 3rd grade. Liza usually went to the nearby school with her classmates, but on that unfortunate day, for some reason, her school friends didn't go with her, and her mother had to take the younger child to kindergarten. According to Elena Kiseleva, her daughter had decided shortly before that fateful day that she could already get to school without being accompanied by adults, and the parents, respecting the child's opinion, did not object. The only strange thing was that on the day Liza disappeared, none of the teachers noticed her absence or asked the parents why she wasn't there. However, when Liza didn't come home for lunch, her mother didn't pay much attention to it either. She thought her daughter had gone to visit one of her friends. Apparently, this was normal in their family. Many people described Liza as a very sociable girl. She was always spending time with her peers. Besides school, Liza also did gymnastics, where she also got along with others easily. However, when her daughter didn't come home by evening and after calling all her friends, Yelena Kiseleva became seriously worried. Liza wasn't with any of them. Moreover, it turned out that the girl hadn't come to school at all that day. No one had seen her in class or after school. Then her mother called the police. After the report was filed and the news spread across social media, a large-scale search began. In total, about 2,000 people were involved in the search operation. Volunteers and professional searchers thoroughly examined the girl's supposed route to school, but it was all in vain. No one even paid attention to the abandoned garage, partially hidden by thick vegetation, because the first thought that came to everyone's mind was, no one has been here recently. The doors were completely blocked by the bushes that had grown here, and it would have been impossible to open the door without damaging them. Apparently that's exactly what the criminal was counting on when he made secret passages from his garage to others nearby. In one of them, the one overgrown with bushes, Mikhail Tuvatin hid the body. On the evening of October 10, 2019, the volunteers announced that the search was over. Conflicting information began to appear online, and soon rumors started spreading about the capture of the criminal. A little later, information somehow leaked online that Liza had been found dead, and that it was the work of a hardened repeat offender, Mikhail Tuvatin. However, there was no official information about this. Authorities confirmed the girl's death until the early hours of October 11. The day after the gathered townspeople were informed about the discovery of Liza's body and the capture of her suspected killer, a memorial of fresh flowers and soft toys was organized near the place where the girl lost her life. Here's how her mother remembers that day. Liza couldn't wake up for a long time. I went up to her several times and tried to wake her up. Although Lizusha is an early bird, she always woke up very early. When she woke up, she mumbled, "I hate this school." Her first class was English. Usually in the mornings we would review words and rules, but that time we didn't do any of that. I thought I wouldn't burden her with that today. She had breakfast in silence. I braided her hair and helped her get dressed. When I was seeing her off to school, I told her to hurry up because she was running late. I asked her to bring home an A. I remember how my daughter stopped on the landing, turned around and smiled at me. And she ran off without taking, as we later realized, her smartwatch, even though she had begged me to give her a cell phone. I never saw her alive again, and that Tuvatin, who aroused considerable suspicion from the investigator, was placed in a police holding cell a few days after the girl was killed. Under pressure from law enforcement, Tuvatin confessed and showed the garage where Liza Kiseleva's body was hidden. It was this garage that the searchers never reached, because from the outside it looked long abandoned, overgrown with nettles and weeds. Thus Tuvatin dragged the girl into his garage, sexually assaulted her, took her life, and then carried her through a passage into another garage, the abandoned one, and threw her into the cellar. After that, Tuvatin concealed the opening. It turned out that the 35-year-old criminal lived just 300 meters from the school where Liza studied, in an old Soviet 5-story building. He shared a 2-room Khrushchevka apartment with his elderly mother, with whom he lived the entire time he was free. However, over several decades, the Tuvatin family was never able to make friends with their neighbors. Moreover, the family developed a negative reputation among those around them. Despite the fact that Tuvatin confessed, his mother, Olga, denied her son's involvement in the crime until the very end. According to her, Mikhail was a hard-working and extremely kind person, incapable of taking a life. The woman explained her son's arrest by saying that the police often detain those who have previous convictions. She was sure that the police would soon figure everything out. And she did not believe that her son confessed to taking a life voluntarily. However, Olga Tuvatina's words were initially met with harsh criticism, since not only her son but also she herself was spoken of unfavorably by neighbors and even by Mikhail's own father. The father of the criminal, Mikhail Tuvatin Sr., said that he left the family because of his wife's inappropriate behavior. And the son Misha allegedly started stealing as a child and regularly stole even from his own relatives. The Tuvatin family's neighbor, Natalia Skidanova, told the Saratov TV channel Zvezda that Olga Tuvatina herself had repeatedly threatened children playing in the yard and even attacked them, as well as adults.
And when I saw it there, I was shocked. They said it's terrible over there.
For some minor reasons, like the kids bothering her with their loud shouting and running around, Tuvatina repeatedly showed aggression towards the children, insulted them, and even raised her hand against them. According to Skidanova, even when Mikhail was serving time for previous crimes, Olga often scolded her. "When my son gets out of prison, we'll see what happens to your children. Your children are always bothering everyone." In addition, the neighbor said that Olga, Mikhail's mother, had attacked her and her children too. Here is a quote from her interview. "One time I was walking to the bus stop for work. She was walking behind me and hit me on the back with her bag. Of course, I didn't do anything to her. She raised a murderer. She's just like him. She's proud of her son." We can only guess what methods Olga Tuvatina used to raise her own son, but she herself is sure that she raised a good person. "My son is wonderful, kind, smart, caring, and hard-working," Mikhail's mother assured journalists. However, she said this in passing because during the spontaneous interview, Olga was trying to fix a door that someone had broken. She flatly refused to have a detailed and substantive conversation with the reporters, demanding that they not talk nonsense when they tried to discuss what had happened and her son's involvement in the crime. I'll leave additional materials on Telegram. By the way, subscribe and check them out. By the way, Tuvatin didn't immediately confess to the killing. At first, the crime was proven with the help of forensic examination. Tuvatin himself described the circumstances as follows. In his version, the girl saw a man in an abandoned garage that did not belong to Mikhail. During the crime scene reenactment, the criminal claimed that Liza herself stopped near him and asked what he was doing in someone else's garage. Fearing that someone else might find out about this, Tuvatin grabbed the girl, covered her mouth so she wouldn't scream, and dragged her into the garage.
As she was passing by, she said something about the garage. Then I turned around, covered her mouth, and brought her in here.
Mikhail had taken over this garage illegally a few months before the incident, and according to him, he supposedly got scared that the garage might belong to the girl's parents. Tuvatin insisted that the reason for the physical assault was supposedly the girl's rude response to his explanation about the garage. However, Mikhail was clearly lying in order to somehow justify himself in the eyes of the public. What was the point of his actions, and why did he drag the girl into the garage to explain something to her? The criminal did not clarify this, but the investigation established what really happened. On the morning of October 9, 2019, 9-year-old Liza Kiseleva left her home at 7 Vysokaya Street to go to school number 73 at 44-2nd Magnitny Proezd. She was last seen alive at 7:30. Seeing the girl walking alone in the alley between the garages, Tuvatin jumped out of his hiding place, grabbed the child by the throat and dragged her into the garage, covering her mouth with his hand. Inside, he threw the girl to the floor and started pulling off her clothes, trying to sexually assault her. Liza fought back desperately, screamed and called for help, so Mikhail started squeezing her throat and eventually got what he wanted. Liza stopped actively resisting. After Tuvatin sexually assaulted her, he took a metal wire lying in the garage and used it to tighten an iron cable around the girl's neck until she died. After that, he threw the body into the cellar of the neighboring garage, closed the lid and left the crime scene. Bastrikin took this case under his personal control. On October 12, Tuvatin was brought to court for a pre-trial detention hearing. It was assumed that he would be brought to the Volzhsky District Court from the Engels pre-trial detention center, where he was kept in a solitary cell so that other inmates wouldn't attack him. Reporters from several Saratov newspapers waited at the Volzhsky court for about 4 hours, but Tuvatin was never brought there. From the video later posted on the investigative committee's website, it is clear that the hearing on Tuvatin's case was eventually held in the Engels District Court. The suspect was taken into custody for 2 months. On October 21, Tuvatin was charged with murder. On December 6, his detention was extended for another 2 months until February 9, 2012. Tuvatin himself was not present at this hearing, and on February 4, the Volzhsky District Court again extended his detention, this time until May 9. Later, there were several more extensions, from April 16 to July 9, and from July 2 to August 9. And then the investigative committee released a video with partial fragments of Mikhail Tuvatin's initial interrogation, in which he confessed to taking the girl's life and expressed remorse. Actually, that's not quite right. The criminal answered yes to a direct question from the investigator interrogating him. The question was whether he regretted what he had done or not. Mikhail paused for a second and only then answered that yes, he regretted it. Do you regret what you did? Yes. However, there doesn't seem to be any genuine remorse. It was more like a pre-rehearsed theatrical performance by an experienced inmate. He played his part without a hitch. On June 19th, the media published a report that, according to the results of the examination, Tuvatin was found to be sane. According to Alexandra Bakshayeva, the lawyer for Liza's parents, Tuvatin was sent for a comprehensive examination at the Serbsky Institute. Mikhail was found to be fully sane, and there were not even signs that he had acted in the heat of passion. On July 16, 2020, the press service of the investigative department of the Saratov region announced the completion of the preliminary investigation and the referral of the case to court. Then the criminal's detention was extended until January 2021, and it was also decided to hold the trial behind closed doors. The final court proceedings began only on August 3, 2020, and were held in the Saratov Regional Court behind closed doors, to be continued. Since the victim was under 18, Mikhail Tuvatin was charged with crimes under paragraphs 5 and K of Part 2 of Article 105, deprivation of life of a minor known to the perpetrator to be in a helpless state, combined with abuse, and paragraph V of Part 4 of Article 132. Other sexual acts involving violence against the victim, taking advantage of the victim's helpless condition, committed against a person under the age of 14. The defendant at first, as already mentioned, fully admitted guilt for all the charges, but then, in August, suddenly he refused to admit guilt under Article 132. According to the lawyer, Tuvatin said that the day before he supposedly did not want to answer questions on this topic and wanted to observe the behavior of the other participants in the process. Liza Kiseleva's mother refused to file a civil lawsuit for compensation for the emotional harm caused to her by the crime. She explained this by saying that their family does not need her daughter's killer's money. On August 14, the parties presented their arguments. The prosecution and the victim's mother, who participated in the trial, requested a life sentence for Tuvatin. On August 24, 2020, the Saratov Regional Court found Mikhail Tuvatin guilty on all counts of the charges brought against him. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment to be served in a high-security penal colony. The verdict was also announced behind closed doors due to coronavirus restrictions, remember? That's right. Only the participants of the trial were allowed into the courtroom. No exceptions were made, not even for the press. Fyodor Telegin, the chairman of the Saratov Regional Court, noted that the severity of the punishment given to Tuvatin was due to the particularly serious nature of the crimes he committed. Liza's mother, Elena Kiseleva, told journalists after the verdict was announced that during the trial, Tuvatin did not show any remorse and did not ask her or her husband for forgiveness. The prosecution and the representative of the victims were satisfied with the verdict. Tuvatin listened to the verdict in silence, still not agreeing. Tuvatin was convicted of violence. Tuvatin and his defense attorney tried to appeal the life sentence on some of the charges. On the abuse charges, but there were no legal grounds for an appeal, on November 2, 2020. After that, the criminal was transferred to the city of Soliletsk in the Orenburg region to correctional colony number 6 known as Black Dolphin, where many criminals sentenced to life imprisonment served their sentences. Many people came to Liza's funeral. On October 11 at 3 p.m., a memorial service for the deceased Liza Kiseleva was held in one of the Saratov churches. The funeral took place on October 13 at 11:30. The service was held for her at the Church of Peter and Paul. About 2,000 Saratov residents came to the church 2 hours before the farewell service. Only close relatives and acquaintances were allowed inside, and photo and video recording was strictly prohibited. But reporters were not idle and tried to film everything. Liza was buried at the new Elshansky cemetery in Saratov. This crime was followed by a strong public reaction. The authorities did not stand aside either. The government of the Saratov region provided financial assistance to the family of the deceased Liza. The regional Ministry of Education carried out preventive work in schools. Irina Sedova, the regional minister of education, posted on her page on Instagram. The governor of the Saratov region instructed the deputy head of the regional government, together with district leaders, to create a commission in each municipality to inspect the grounds of educational institutions for school children and preschoolers, as well as the approaches to them for safety. On October 14, 2019, a meeting was held at the Saratov administration on the topic of ensuring the safety of children in Saratov, during which some officials stated that hundreds of city residents requested to check all existing routes to city schools. But the story of the crime did not end there and took a completely unexpected turn. In January 2020, due to negative comments online, a prosecutorial review was launched against the parents of the deceased Elizaveta Kiseleva, regarding whether they properly fulfilled their parental duties. One woman spoke extremely negatively online about Liza's mother, who allowed her young daughter to walk to school alone, and also about the girl's own behavior, which, according to the hater, provoked Tuvatin to commit a crime. Nevertheless, the district prosecutor's office quickly organized a check on the girl's parents, responding to the anonymous complaint. Another anonymous complaint, this time to the regional prosecutor, was posted in the comments section on the Faces of the Saratov province website. A user with the nickname Anna Vadimovna asked the prosecutor to evaluate the actions of Elena Kiseleva. It was Anna Vadimovna who claimed that Liza lost her life definitely because of her mother's criminal negligence, who didn't bother to escort her daughter by the hand and meet her afterward. These are signs of the girl's sharp tongue, so that she got into a verbal altercation with the criminal. I'm quoting here. End of quote. Do you walk your children to school and back, holding their hand until they turn 18? Write in the comments. There was also a phrase in the statement: it is necessary to assess the possibility of this family raising a second child. At that time, the late Liza's family was raising her infant younger brother, Timofey. At the beginning of 2020, at the time of the prosecutor's inspection, he was 3.5 years old. And the anonymous Anna Vadimovna was still worried because of the ongoing quarrels and the mudslinging against the administration of school number 73. It was this very school that Liza never made it to. Judging by the direction of the concerns, it's possible that behind the anonymous nickname were actually employees of that very school, tired of numerous inspections and deciding to redirect the prosecutor's attention in this way, and thus distract attention from themselves. But Anna Vadimovna was far from alone in her criticism of Liza's mother. There were many comments saying that the mother of the deceased girl was allegedly actively using the tragedy for publicity.
A terrible tragedy happened in our family, and we will never be able to recover from it or live as we did before. All our dreams and plans collapsed overnight. Our entire way of life was just turned upside down. And our grief, of course, couldn't be compared to anything. Right now, we would probably give anything in the world just to see Lizonka alive for even a moment. The creature that took her from us, whom I unfortunately cannot call a human being, will never have peace again, neither on earth nor in heaven. The main thing is now his judge will be the Lord.
Lately, she really has been appearing on screen and on the internet too often, and not just because of her personal tragedy. Kiseleva threw herself into public activity and seemed to be everywhere at once, although it would seem that doesn't really mean anything. And what do you think? Is being active in any way after such a tragedy something bad, good, neutral, or what? Write in the comments. A supervisory official from the prosecutor's office quickly responded to this open appeal. On the website Faces of Saratov Province, a response from the prosecutor's office was published stating that the verification of the arguments presented in the appeal was assigned to the prosecutor's office of the Kirovsky district according to territorial jurisdiction. The lawyers for the Kiseleva family also contacted the prosecutor's office on their part, since Liza's parents believed that they had the right to know the person who heard all of this, and most importantly to understand why he did it. The case of Liza's death received widespread public attention not only in Saratov but throughout the entire country. At the time of the killing, no other crime circumstances were being discussed more widely online. Russians were concerned about what caused the tragedy. Afterwards, Liza's mother, contradicting herself, stated, "My intuition told me that something bad could happen in the garages, but I kept pushing those thoughts away." The road through the garages leads not only to the school, but also to several kindergartens, the children's clinic, and the post office, so it's very popular here. These are narrow paths equipped with stairs. The road was always covered with trash, branches, and tall grass grew there. And despite statements that homeless people and outcasts are encountered on the way to school, Yelena Kiseleva also added that she has never met any strange people in the garage complex. "Actually, to be honest, I didn't notice anything back then that I see now," the woman said. "The government services were not particularly efficient." The investigative committee suddenly remembered that Tuvatin had an outstanding conviction, which means that, having been released on parole, Mikhail was required to report monthly to the local branch of the Federal Penitentiary Service. Supervision by local police officers was also established for individuals who had committed similar crimes, but it was not possible to find out from the local police department whether Tuvatin had reported there. For some reason, the local police station was locked and there was no contact information for the responsible officer or any posted office hours. Then everyone started to remember that Tuvatin got very little time and received lenient sentences. Meanwhile, under public pressure, the local authorities began to put on a show and pretend to address route safety problems in the city. So, some female officials stated that every route had been inspected and the dangers had been eliminated. However, another deputy stated that he did not see any results from such an inspection. In August 2020, the TVSR film crew went to the area built up with garages where Liza lost her life to check how the officials' promises were being fulfilled. The administration of the Kirovsky district commented that by that time 47 garages had been dismantled, 11 lawsuits had been filed, staircases had been built, lighting had been restored, 12 lamps had been installed, sidewalks leading to schools had been repaired, and the area had been improved by removing unauthorized dumps and over 500 cubic meters of tree debris. However, despite the public outcry, not all Saratov residents were happy about the local authorities' activity regarding the garage complexes. So, on the morning of August 31, 2020 municipal employees and staff visited Vysokaya Street, where Liza was killed, and began preparations to demolish the garages located there, because most of them turned out to be unauthorized constructions. But the public, which had recently been demanding action from the authorities, did not appreciate such a gesture. The owners, including those whose garages had long not been used for their intended purpose, were extremely outraged by the actions of the police and the administrative pressure being put on them. Potential car owners demanded to be given time to formalize their property rights. A written demand was also sent to the head of the Regional Ministry of Internal Affairs, requesting that the violation of citizens' property rights through police involvement not be allowed. That's what had the public so outraged. Routes to school. Right up until administrative measures affected the situation as a result of such shifts in public opinion. 2 years after the tragedy, nothing had changed at the crime scene. One of the local car owners said that nothing has changed here for half a century. Just as children used to walk through the garages to school 40 years ago, they will keep doing so. And the dangerous, illegally built garages, where horrific things are all too common, have ended up staying in their old place. The quick and safe detours promised by the authorities haven't appeared here either. All 5 school routes leave much to be desired. There's everything here except safety. Piles of construction debris, dangerous slopes, open sewer manholes, and homeless encampments. However, by and large, nobody really cares, and the passions surrounding the tragedy have long since faded, maybe until the next high-profile incident. But after that, perhaps on January 28, 2022, a law was passed imposing life imprisonment for repeat offenders, those who prey on people under 14. Amid public outcry, calls to bring back the death penalty resurfaced. Even the criminal's father said his son should be executed. And only Yelena Kiseleva, Liza's mother, who had repeatedly thanked everyone who cared, sympathized with her, and helped search for her daughter, voiced a sensible thought. She said that instead of the death penalty, it is much more important to take care of other children to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. In particular, in her opinion, it is necessary to make the routes to schools safe. But even such statements from the mother received not only positive responses. Once again, haters were outraged by Yelena's public activity after her daughter's death. Many once again accused the woman of seeking publicity at the expense of her family tragedy. For example, some armchair experts were unhappy that Kiseleva got involved in public work and helped search for the boy who went missing in November 2019 in the Samoilovsky district of the Saratov region. The situation became so tense that the children's ombudsman of the Saratov region had to step in to defend the woman. She commented on this matter as follows. People on the internet started expressing outrage over the fact that the mother became active, searching for the missing Arthur, speaking out, looking for dangerous places, and organizing people. But she's expected to stay home and cry. But who saw this mother at home at night, and who was able to go through this? In February 2020, since the overall situation with safe access to the school still hadn't changed, one of the brilliant residents of Saratov suggested demolishing school number 73 where Liza Kiseleva once studied. The woman wrote about this in the Lizonka chat, which was created by the mother of the deceased. She wrote it like this: "What has changed since October at school number 73? They replaced the stairs, installed 2 streetlights, cut down 2 bushes, and then stopped there. They could have at least allocated money to demolish those garages. They could have installed video surveillance and fenced them off from the children. Honestly, they should just demolish and close this school and move it to an area where it's actually safe for children to walk." On February 24, 2021, rumors began to spread in the V-Contact community that Tuvatin had allegedly taken his own life. This was done in the comments under the report about the release of the maniac Viktor Mokov from the Saratov colony. Someone brought up Tuvatin in passing, and then a certain woman claimed that he had committed suicide and insisted that she had learned this information directly from acquaintances working in the Federal Penitentiary Service. But the vigilant chat participants suspected the girl of lying and deliberately spreading fake news since she was never able to prove she was right. Meanwhile, the inconsistent statement quickly sparked a public response. Therefore, on March 2nd, 2021, the Kiselev's lawyer, Alexandra Baksheva, was forced to give an interview to journalists and report that, according to the information she had, Tuvatin was alive and well, and he is still serving his sentence in the Black Dolphin. In 2024, school number 73 was closed for repairs after an emergency occurred there on February 8. A wall collapsed right during a lesson. A video filmed by students quickly made its way online and sparked a new wave of public outrage. I'll leave additional materials in the Telegram channel Strashnoti. Subscribe and check them out. After the renovation began, the issue of students' safety on their way to school resolved itself. No school, no problem. In the summer of 2025, a decision was made to build a new school in Saratov near the territory of Childhood Park in the Leninsky district. It is unknown whether the events of 2019 influenced this decision. The story became surrounded by rumors, speculation, and mystifications involving Liza Kiseleva. So already in 2020, her mother started saying that she had a bad feeling about her daughter, that something was wrong. She also began to interpret Liza's behavior differently on the eve of her death. She said this: "Just a few days before the tragedy, Liza moved her pillow on her bed and lay down with her feet toward the door. I'm not superstitious, but I didn't like it, and I asked her to put the pillow back the way it was. Lizusha said it was comfortable like that, so I didn't argue. The day before the tragedy, She tore a poster out of a children's magazine and stuck it on the wall above her bed. The poster said, "Together forever." Maybe it's all just superstition, but what happened made me think. The poster is still hanging above her bed. And what do you think about all this? Leave your comments, like or dislike, and watch other videos on the channel. There are a lot of them, and you definitely haven't seen them all.